You're listening to the Adventuring Party for the 4th week of January 2021. This week, if you have a group of annoying adventurers of level 6 to 8, we might just have a deadly encounter that will get them out of your precious campaign for good. The Adventuring Party is tabletop and related gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Eoin.
And I'm still Savage.
And we are here today to discuss those encounters that just get players killed. Specifically, we are going to take apart and forensically dissect a singular encounter selected from the annals of RPGdom, published on the criteria that is a death count in the dozens. Players slain by a published encounter that they were not prepared to deal with. Perhaps could not be prepared to deal with. But first, a word from our sponsor.
He couldn't make it, so I'm just going to talk about my beer. I've got something from St. Mel's this week. Independent brewing company, proudly emblazoned. Not much of a logo, try harder. Something called My Twist, which I feel is kind of in my graveyard. And it's a DDH hazy IPA, 40mm jacketed round. I don't know. They're putting lots of numbers and letters on my beer now, and I just don't know what any of them mean. So I'm just going to crack it open, and we'll get into it. This sounds awfully like something we're going to come back to again and again, because there's a few of them out there, aren't there? Like the TPK scenarios.
Just an encounter. Like, this isn't even a full scenario. This is just one slice, one little evening's entertainment that has gone off like a claymore mine in the face of both the players and the GM, who just didn't figure it was going to be that bad. Who go in kind of thinking, all right, we are going to tackle this and it's going to be no problem whatsoever. And an evening of acrimony and anger at the end of it, because all the players are dead and the GM is looking at his encounter going, what went wrong there? And we're going to start with a classic of its type. From Pathfinder 1st Edition, Rise of the Runelords, Book 2, the infamous Shadow Clock Tower. To set the scene a little, the players have been investigating a series of murders in the city of Magnamar, which drag them to an unusual location, an abandoned clock tower. The party most likely approach at night under cover of darkness, wondering what's going wrong, wondering who is the evil mastermind behind all these murders, these instances of mind control they found along the city. They enter the tower, and everything goes off the rails. This is an interesting encounter to take a look at because it doesn't involve a huge variety of enemy NPCs. There is a variant flesh golem on the first floor, the Scarecrow. And a flesh golem is, for a party of this would be 7th level characters, a reasonable but not crazily dangerous challenge. They should be able to hack down a flesh golem unless you've got a situation where you don't have a fighter or don't have a barbarian which you're prepared to do some damage. But you should be able to handle that too reasonably well. Your problems begin as you start to attempt to climb this tower. And we're going to explain why. Mick, have you taken a look at this scenario?
I am flicking through it now. It's like these have been on my shelves for longer than I care to admit. The Skinsaw Murders is the issue. The second issue of the Pathfinder series that they put out, and I've always read through the first part of this and kind of nicked a few ideas. I've used Mr. Skinsaw himself on occasion. It's great artwork in the book, Skinsaw Man, but I don't think I ever ran this in its entirety. And this is the capstone encounter. This is where you're meant to kind of get all the answers and chase down the bad guy to his lair. Is that correct? Yeah, this is where it kind of gets done.
You've cornered, this is where this person's operating out of. Let's go take care of them. Now, one of the things, this is actually, although this was Pathfinder, this was done when it was still being run as 3.5 edition D&D. And as a result, this was built with the same mechanical expertise that went into constructing the earlier 3.5 adventure paths, such as Age of Worms or Savage Tide. As a result, generally speaking, these ones would have at least one fight in each book that was a tester of your skill as a player. Literally, the archetypical boss battle. This is a deliberately difficult fight.
Have you been paying attention? Have you learned all the moves? Can
Exactly.
you work together?
Have you sussed out what your characters can do? Because this fight is a tester of that. It asks you that question. Can you handle a difficult opposition? And the difficult opposition in this case is the mastermind of the cult that's murdering people, Zanisha, a Lamia Matriarch Sorcerer 2. She is a CR10 monster. Now, for a party of probably 4 level 7 characters, a CR10 monster encountered on an open plain would be a difficult fight. Very difficult fight.
Far from open, though. We've got a rickety tower to climb.
Exactly. And this is one of the key factors in this encounter. This is not an open area where your players can move out and maximize their strengths, where the fighter can go, okay, I'm going to get into melee, I'm going to start hacking away, and the cleric can move up and back me up and maybe heal me if she focuses her attacks on me. This isn't that fight at all. At all. But let's round down some tail of the tape here. Let's take a look at a couple of key stats for Zanisha for a start.
And hold on, just if it's not clear to people at this point, put your spoiler pants on. We're not
absolutely.
holding back here. We're talking about this was published in what? 2000? No, not even 2000. Was it? Well, yeah.
No, it will be after 2000. It will be 2000.
It's
at least 10 years.
7.
Yeah.
So strap in, boys and girls. We're taking a good look at this, and we're not. If you haven't read it and you don't want to get spoiled, go elsewhere. Right, kick off then.
Kick off. Let's take a look. I want to pull out a couple of key stats for you to watch out. Number 1, her AC is 26. Now, if you're rolling in with a level 7 fighter, you probably have about plus maybe 15 to hit. If you've been a good boy and you've bought your gear and you've kept your magic weapon up and you make sure to invest in a couple of key buffs. So, if you got a 15 to hit, your first attack is hitting her on an 11. A lot of other characters will not have that degree of proficiency and will be hitting her far less often. But I'm just going to draw your attention to something in her spell list and her tactics. Before combat, she casts Fly, Mage Armor, and Shield on herself. Mage Armor and Shield are going to raise her AC by 7. So she is not actually going to be AC 26. She is instead going to be AC 33. So immediately, you've got an incredibly difficult to hit opponent. To strike her in melee or ranged combat, you need to be an exceptionally skilled character to reliably hit her. On top of that, 142 hit points means she is not going down quickly at all. You're going to need to be very lucky to burn down that difficulty. Even a 20 with this AC, if you roll a 20, you hit, sure, but then you've got to confirm your critical hit, because we're back in the days of 3.5. Challenging, tough bad guy. Now, there is a note saying the effects are incorporated into her stats, but if you actually take a look at the stats, which are calculated, they're not there. They're not there properly. The 9 natural AC is there, the 6 dex is there, but it's +1 armor. That should be +4 armor if mage armor is there, and it should be a +4 shield bonus to AC if the shield was calculated there. So they're not calculated correctly there.
Wait, are they actually kind of going a little bit easy on the players with the
Could well be. Could well be. But this isn't your problem. Engaging with her is going to be your problem. Now, if you take a look at the layout of this locality, you're going to be climbing this tower. And because it's a rickety clock tower, the players are going to be making their way up a stairwell, up and up and up on the outer layer of the tower. So there's a big gap in the middle. And this tower is deliberately rickety.
And narrow
so it
stairs and not a lot of windows, so you don't get to cheat across the levels. You're going to have to go up this hard way.
Now, you can climb the outside if you want. That will not help you terribly well because most players are actually not going to be good enough to climb it reliably. It's, I believe, a DC 20 climb check to get up the outside. DC 25 climb check to climb the outside. Only a character who's invested a bit in climb or has something like spider climb is going to make their way up that way. Most players are going to go into the center of this thing and immediately they're in trouble because the bad guy is going to be able to dictate this encounter. And that's one of the key elements of this fight. The bad guy dictates this encounter. It dictates entirely how it happens. Now, they're heading up the stairs. The stairs are highly treacherous. If more than one medium creature is in a pair of adjacent squares, the wood is overloaded. It creaks and sways alarmingly for 1d4+1 rounds, and if it is still overloaded at the end of that, it cracks and falls away, and anybody needs to make a save or fall.
So you're going to have to keep moving.
You have to keep moving, and you have to keep space between each other.
Yeah.
Then, if a set of bad guys, some faceless stalkers in Area 3, notice the players making their way up and they've been just fighting a flesh golem on the front once, so they probably hear them, they cut the bells and they drop the bells down on them. Now, this is a problem because you'll get hit by the bells for quite a lot of damage and possibly you'll also fall. So you can take a tremendous amount of damage like this way. And the real problem is that those falling bells alerts the bad guy you're on your approach. So you're making your way up this tower. These bells fall down on you, waking the bad guy up, well, alerting the bad guy to what's happening, and she starts her preparatory buffs. So she puts fly, mage armor, shield in herself, then also mirror image, haste, invisibility, silence.
And all this while you're dealing with the flesh golem who
Yep.
has a few hit points.
Yeah. Or you're fighting the guys with the thing, or you're healing the person who fell down, you've gone down and picked someone up. So you're making your way back up this tower.
And each of those bells is hitting 1d4 people. It's not just, oh, someone got squished, like a whole bunch of you going to get squished.
Absolutely.
They do not mess around. So, what now?
Here's your problem. She can fly, she's invisible, and she's a bunch of really, really dangerous spells to cast on you.
Acid splash.
And what's worse is she's smart. Look at her tactics there. In her first round, she activates False Light to give herself some more hit points. Then she casts Divine Favour, buffing her attack and damage. Then she casts a Major Image to make an illusory flying demon appear in a cloud of smoke that circle the top of the tower. The players at this point may start to waste attacks or spells into that flying demon. So immediately the bad guy is peeling off some resources from the players. Then she attempts to petrify a player using her mask, which makes her invisible or visible. If the player is petrified, she's going to push them off the edge of the thing and they're going to smash the ground. So that's a dead player. There are a lot of players die at this point. You wouldn't think it's only a DC 15 fortitude save to not die, but if you're a wizard or some other character without a great constitution, you can get targeted by that, turned to stone, and pushed off. And that's the end of your character in this fight, possibly forever.
Bring a dustpan and brush. That is
Absolutely.
all right. And that's her opener.
That's her opener. And then what do you do? Well, she's got a giant pile of spells, but also she's incredibly dangerous in melee.
Yeah, decent base attack. A whole bunch.
She's got plus 20 to hit. Add in Divine Favour, and that's actually plus 23 to hit, and plus 2d6 plus 12 damage, 19 to 20 by 3 crit, plus she does you 1 point of wisdom damage every time you hit you. Now, that means, what do players do when they encounter something like this? You've got a bad guy, a big demon flying around. Now, you might waste some spells on that and nothing happens. In this situation, a wizard is a 7th level wizard. They have a few 3rd level spells. They have probably prepared one fly. The usual tactic here is to cast fly on the fighter or melee person and send them up to engage the bad guy. You send this bad guy up to engage Zanessa. The problem is, a fighter one-on-one with her on their own is probably going to lose that exchange. In fact, is almost certainly going to lose that exchange. So she can whip you down with her spear, or if you close the range where she can't use a spear, like you go into her, you provoke attack of opportunity, she pokes you once with your spear, doing you a decent amount of damage. You're then fighting her. So she may either fight you, or what's worse, she may touch you and do you 2d4 wisdom drain. Eats a round of attacks. Next round, she moves back, provoking attack of opportunity for you, taking a hit, and then she casts Charm Monster on your fighter, who's had their wisdom purged. All of a sudden, you're not fighting two flying monsters, or one flying monster, you're fighting two.
Wonder if the guys who made Darkest Dungeon read this. A lot of this seems familiar.
It's really well worth taking. I mean, you can also play her as a hit and run character where she's flying around the middle of the tower invisible, pops off a couple of spells, makes a few pokes, then turns herself invisible again. Then flies off, moving around. Like, make it the players can't engage with this. You've got a 3-dimensional movement where the bad guy could be moving up or down because she can fly, casting these spells, and you can't get to grips with her. So she's pounding you with magic every second round. She's pressuring you. She's putting the hurt on you, and it's almost impossible to engage with her.
And she does have quite a bit of space to move. I mean, we talked about you being kind of confined in the tower on the stairs. But it's a tall tower. If each of these levels is 20 feet, and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 of them, 7 of them that you can access. That's 140 feet of space for her to zip up and down in.
And you can't all engage her at the same time, because if you're in the same section, the fall may fall off.
And there are sections of the stairs missing as well, aren't there?
Yeah, there's little gaps and stuff in it. So the whole thing is a nightmare. You're trying to fight a superior opponent in somewhere where she can completely dictate the terms of engagement. She can retreat easily. She can basically really put the pain on you. And it's very easy for her to get away. She's got Dimension Door. So if things are going south, she can just leave. So it's an incredibly difficult fight. A lot of people ends with her flying away. After like really pounding the players into nearly dust, flying away because to hell with this, I'm not interested in this fight anymore. It's such a dangerous fight, and so many players. You can look up the TPKs, and this one was responsible for so many. What brought it to mind was that Shane Hensley, the designer of Savage Worlds, is prepping the Rise of the Rune Lords adventure for Savage Worlds, and he's been testing it, playtesting it. They playtested this encounter, their version of it, under the Savage Worlds system, and the players nearly all died. They nearly totally wiped. And Eric Mona, senior guy in Paizo, popped in to say, yeah, that was the most deadly encounter we ever printed. So it's an incredible encounter. Now, what do you take out of it? What you should take out of this?
Well, hold on. Just before we sort of get into analysis of that the Faceless Stalkers didn't get mentioned much, but they're a thing in and of themselves, aren't they?
They are. They're not the most... If you take a look, they're only a CR4 threat. So for 7th level characters, that shouldn't be like crazily dangerous. You can take a look. They're later on the TC. But they're dangerous because you mightn't have noticed them. And they're effectively the warning for her. Yeah. So they're warning for her about what's to happen.
Because this doesn't occur in a sort of a pocket. The players have met other NPCs, they've had all these tangles, and one of these stalkers might take on the shape of someone they've already met. The GM is feeling malicious, and there could be some obfuscation or interference, or look out and get someone to go the wrong way. Or pretend to be a hostage that they have to then devote resources to. All sorts of ways that these kind of minor henchmen could also be used to interfere with the smooth execution of a fight here, and they get sneak attack.
Absolutely. So they poke you in the back. But Zanessa's the main threat, and she's a tremendously dangerous threat. They're mostly a warning system. That they're going to give her an out so she can prepare all her stuff. And she gets to prepare a lot. You'll also notice as a sorcerer, she has an awful lot of spells. So she's got 8 invisibilities if she wants them. And that's to be noted as being dangerous. That's to be very much noted.
Yeah. So what do we go? Okay, so where are we going from this? What do we take, as you say?
What do you take? Well, the first one is... This is a great example of deploying a flying enemy to huge effect. Because it's not just that the person's flying above you and dipping down and hitting you or popping range attacks into you, which is a challenging fight on its own. This is a bad guy who's attacking you on the ground, but using that flight to be able to move up and down out of your ability to counter. And because she has so many invisibilities, she can utilize those for her advantage, where she can go I'll turn invisible. In a standard scenario, if someone turns invisibility on the ground, there's a limited amount they can move afterwards, and you can often nail them with an AoE, like a bag of flour or a glitter dust or a fairy fire. With that three-dimensional element, it's so much more difficult to catch her, because she could have gone up, she could have gone down, she could have stayed where she was. You don't know. So this is invisibility and flight combining to make it almost impossible to determine where the bad guy is. And it will force the players, this forces players out of their comfort zone. They have to think of new tactics to fight this one. You can't just go, I just use sword on man. This isn't a fight where you can use sword on bad guy easily. It's incredibly difficult to use sword on bad guy. You've got someone who's very dangerous in range, and even if you get only part of the party into melee with her, setting a quarter of the party to fight her in melee will result in a quarter of the party getting minced in melee. Or what's worse, charmed and sent against the party. And that's the other factor here. A lot of our TPKs come from charm monstering one of the players and then having them fight on the stairs. And that's a horrific situation, because you're fighting on the stairs, you're in melee with your fighter, he's fighting you on the stairs, you're going, for the love of God, make the will save, and then the stairs crack off and you fall down to the bottom.
And a bell lands on you.
Yeah,
everyone laughs.
This is a nightmare fight.
And I think the line of sight stuff is really important here, because you've got this set of stairs that's going all the way up this tower, which means that from her point of view, it's really a corridor fight with plenty of cover. But from your point of view, you're all the time watching her dodge in and out as she dimension doors and invisibilities, and you, as you say, you don't know where she's going to come from. She can take you apart piecemeal, maybe turn one of you against the others, who knows. And presumably you've been fairly scuffed by that. Well, I suppose the Scarecrow isn't necessarily the toughest fight here.
It's tough enough. If it's a high magic party, a Golem is always a challenge.
It has immune to magic as well.
Yeah. So it's most likely the Golem will just take some damage off you, or take some health off, that you may be able to heal back up, assuming you pause and rest. But pausing and resting at the bottom is invitation for the bad guys further up to prepare stuff. Like the Stalker's going up and telling her that one of the people are coming up. And also he does have weapon focus scythe, and he's focused on the scythe, and scythes are a feast or famine weapon. But when you crit with a scythe was used to be crit by 4 crit. So if he does roll a natural 20, you could have a dead player.
And a very high climb skill on that thing as well, so don't leave it behind.
It's going to climb up after you. It's going to climb up the outside of the thing after you. So it's a brilliant fight to look at from a design point of view, because you utilize difficult terrain, very difficult terrain, and it's vertical. It's actually very difficult for players in some RPGs to conceive of vertical movement as opposed to moving around the battle map. This battle map has a three-dimensional aspect to it. So calculation of range becomes a lot harder, because you're firing up. And you're I'm firing up like 30 feet on top of a cross. And then you're suddenly calculating the angle of the hypotenuse and going, I'd really be a lot closer than I normally do to hit people with my stuff. Hit my spells or my arrows. This is a fight where a ranged character is a blessing, where powerful melee is neutralized, where the wizard can end up blowing their best spells hitting an illusion, or trying to figure out where she is. And it's a tremendous fight. It's one worth examining, because it neutralizes so many of the standard player metagame stuff, like, okay, we all get into melee at the same time and we whop her down, like we just damage her down before she has a chance to really make us pay with like wisdom damage and other stuff like that. Doesn't work as well in this situation. She's too tough to be easily taken out by one lucky crit, and she's going to hop around taking her time. The only thing she doesn't have much access to is much healing, which is good. She has some cure light wounds, but that's about it. So she at least can't retreat, full heal herself, and come back after you again. But a very tough fight for a set of players. She has a bunch of high-level spells, like Didor, which you probably don't have an answer to at that stage. You probably haven't prepared Dimensional Anchor or anything like that, so she can just get away and return to trouble you later. It's a tremendous fight to examine.
I noticed ventriloquism there as well, which might seem minor, but, for taunting somebody from the shadows while you're invisible on 2 floors above them, and you've got them casting around looking for you. I imagine that's I don't know the spell exactly, but a great way of kind of misdirecting players who are searching for you.
And she casts silent on a section up at the top. So if you actually get to the top floor to fight her there rather than fighting her on the way up the stairs, she's cast silence there. You're in a zone of silence. Unless you have silent spell, your wizards and clerics can't cast anything there. So you're going to end up retreating out of it. And that's when you're back down, run down the thing, and she's fighting you on the way down.
Perfect for her. And
absolutely. And if you can try to go up the outside of the thing, I'll climb up the outside of the tower, and then you're trying to fight her while hanging on with one hand the outside of a tower.
See, I think it's because consider the party 4 or 5 players. Will we say just 4 in this case?
Yes, standard. We'll say 4. It's assumed 4.
It's a big risk, and I think it'll pay off if you can get up there and interfere with the faceless stalkers who are letting loose the bells. But it's a massive risk, and if you do get spotted, yes, as you say, she will pick you off at will. You don't have a hope in hell. Now, of course, the party may have access to fly themselves. Does that help as much as you might think?
You see, the problem is, because they're 7th level, the wizard will have 3 or 4 spells, 3rd level spells. And what wizard... the wizard is probably going to be tempted to have a variety of tools. The wizard is probably very tempted to have haste, because it's a very powerful party buff. The wizard is probably very tempted to have a fireball, and the wizard is probably very tempted to prepare 1 fly. 1 fly just gets 1 character into trouble. So you can try and send 1 fighter up to fight this person. They will lose in a 1-on-1 fight. She's too tough for 1 fighter to take out. Maybe a very heavily min-maxed barbarian might be able to burst her down. But there's challenges on that, and you might win, and you also might lose, or worse, your barbarian's going to get mind controlled and sent back after you. So dangerous was this fight that it was nerfed in the Rise of the Rune Lords Anniversary Edition, where her sorcerer levels were removed and replaced with rogue levels. Her AC was tuned down, and she lost fly, shield, and mage armor as spells.
A very different fight.
She could no longer fly, because that was the killer. Her ability to move up and down made her far too difficult to tackle and tussle with. So that in the nerf of that fight, her AC went down, her HP went down, but all her attack went down. But also critically, her mobility was removed, because she just had too much mobility in this fight, too much of an ability to hit and fade and accidentally wipe your party.
And isn't it interesting? That's the deciding factor.
Yes.
You've got this confined space, verticality, and then the freedom to move along that axis that the players probably don't have as much as. And as you say, it's a good fix. I think it's an excellent fix, because she's still formidable. If she's got rogue levels, then there's a lot about this fight that still makes sense.
Absolutely. She's still got sneak attack. She can go out and poke you. So it's still a dangerous fight even with those changes, but much toned down by the removal of that mobility. And it's a brilliant illustration of mobility being used to be a threat multiplier on a bad guy. It doesn't matter that the party outnumber her if only 1 or 2 of them can leverage their strengths against her each turn. It is a fight worth studying, because you can steal ideas from this fight. The notion of fighting your way up a tower while taking on flying bad guys, you could do like with a host of weaker bad guys, taking shots with bows and flying up and down like little imps or something. That could be a very challenging fight where you're like, all of a sudden the melee guys can't use their melee weapons, and they have to start going, do I have a javelin? Do I have a bow? I guess I'm now in a bow fight. And you could put something together very, very clever involving that, with bad guys basically maybe scampering up the walls and firing arrows off from the other side as the party attempts to, okay, what can we do? Can we build a shield wall or something? Can we do something to defend ourselves here? We're getting really picked away at. So it's an interesting fight worthy of study.
I think so. I've run towers and things like that before, but I've tended to fall into probably the mistake now that I see this of dividing them discreetly into levels, Whereas this really is a continuous spiral of uncertain terrain with a committed foe and some nasty traps. And it all takes place in that one sort of cylinder of death.
Absolutely.
That's sort of what I'm getting for this. How heavily would you weigh the bells in this scenario?
The bells are kind of a set piece in some ways, but I think I would consider using them periodically, having someone pop one and then the players have to hug it to the side and try to avoid getting hit by a bell as they come down. I think there's a lot of juice in that.
Yeah, they tear out a big section of the stairs as well when they hit.
Yeah.
They get rid of 10 feet of stairs, presumably all the way down.
Yeah. So you've got to... You're like, oh my god, the stairs are gone now. There's a gap we've got to transfer. There's juice in this sort of fight where all of a sudden it becomes about navigating the terrain under stress. Regular jumping over a crevasse in D&D can be incredibly nerve-wracking. Jumping over a crevasse when the guy's trying to hit you, incredibly difficult. And also, this one's hard to escape. The players are on this rickety stairway running slowly down while like when she starts winning, if you try to retreat, you're often boned because she's just going to keep flying after you, poking you as you try to get away. It's a difficult fight to extract yourself of. That's actually my biggest criticism of it, is that once it starts going wrong, it's very hard to retreat because you're like,
there's no windows, very few exit points. Maybe halfway up the tower there's some windows, you could probably get through the bars. But apart from that, you're either getting out the top or getting back down at the bottom. And as you say, you're under fire the whole way. Well, it's I can see why it wipes so many parties. Like it's just a torrent of death from above, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's it's legendary for how many people it's killed. And if once you're in it, I would either make a decision to try and extract myself from it, which might be just too difficult, or I would look to immediately go, right, her peppering us at range is killing us. Now, the first thing I would do is I would pop smoke grenades. Now, you're going, oh, and it's D&D, we don't have smoke grenades. Well, you should have smoke sticks, or you should have fog cloud or something for this kind of situation where you're in a point where the bad guy is dictating the engagement under complete cover. At which point I would pop smoke sticks, or I will pop fog cloud or something, or I would cover myself so that it's not as easy for her to just pepper you away. You're going to have to try and force her to fight in melee. And there's only two places for you to force her to fight in melee. You go to the top of the tower or you go to the bottom of the tower. And you've got to do that immediately. So, if you have a wizard with Featherfall, I would consider everyone readies an action, dives off at the same time, retreats to the bottom. And if she continues to fight there, she fights you there. If she retreats, and you're going to have to track her down later. You're in a trap at the moment. You're in a trap which you are monstrously disadvantaged in. You have to get out of this trap or find another way to deal with it. Though how I dealt with this when I played this as a player was we were fighting the nerfed version, so it was dangerous but not incredibly dangerous. What I actually did was I was playing a slightly broken class, and I was kind of a wizard with a golem effectively class, reduced spell access, but I had a golem, so I cast Spider Climb on the golem, and myself and the golem hauled ourselves up the outside of it and fought her that way, while the rest of the party made their way up the inside. So I went up the outside and kind of distracted her because I was like, someone's up the top of that. And when the bells dropped, I said, okay, I punched a hole in the wall with the golem, and we went out up the outside to try and effectively figure out what was going on, because I was like, this is another set of set pieces that are going to cause us some difficulty. Let's sidetrack. So step out of it, which is annoying for a GM when the players go, I'm going to step out of this encounter now, and you're like, I've really prepped a lot of this encounter, and I go, I know, but it's going to kill us, so I'm just getting out of here right now.
I happen to agree. I think the answer here is to get at least one party member out and around, so that you change that bracketing from the monsters bracketing you to you bracketing the monsters. Like, that's how you solve this.
Though you got to be very careful when she confronts you one-on-one. You've got to have a way for the rest of the party to get to you, or you're in a massive amount of trouble. So you have to get up fast so they can meet you at the top there. You're not alone for more than a turn or two with her, because she'll just poke you to death with her spear.
See, she's spot +2. I think there's the opportunity here to step away.
Yes.
Like, she doesn't have the best ability to keep track of all of her opponents if they take some measures to try and slip away. So it could become a really interesting cat and mouse game. But let's finish where all encounters finish. Is the game worth the candle? I mean, there's some magic items on show here. Would you say you get a good reward for tackling and besting this encounter?
The Sihedron medallion you get is very important for the plot, and it also casts false life once per day as a free action. Actually quite good. The Ring of Protection is standard. The Impaler of Thorns is her spear, which is... I'm trying to remember what it does. It was decent.
Hold on. It does a bunch of stuff. Once a day, strike a foe, trigger a 30-foot radius burst of despair, DC 16 will saves, or become overwhelmed with sad and despair -2 penalties, attack saving throws, ability checks, skill checks, weapon damage rolls for 6 minutes. And the target, when this struck is triggered, also must make a second DC 16 will save to resist becoming nauseated for a round.
Which means you'll lose your turn. That's good. The Medusa Mask
is potentially even more deadly.
Yeah, it is. It's got a low chance kill, but it also gives you a bunch of saves against visual effects, which includes gaze attacks and a lot of illusions. And that's actually really good for a head slot, because there aren't many head slot items that do something like that. And the Snakeskin Tunic is a bit of AC, a bit of extra dexterity, and a bit of resistance to poison. So,
which in the 3.5 days, you'd pile on lots of gear like that. Yeah, you get your AC up.
But this is the main boss of this particular chapter, so you can't really go, let's skip her.
No. Oh, it's the only way you're going out of this is through this. And of course it leads on to the rest of Rise of the Rune Lords. Yeah, it's a bit of it's a classic. Put them in a box and throw stones at them, and then put a bear in the box and throw stones at the bear. I think it's well worth considering, but from the point of view of what we're doing here, well worth considering just how deadly simple combinations of monsters and scenario environment can be. I'm a big fan of environment as a killer, and this is a pretty good example of that. The Shadow Clock. Right. Anything else?
No, I think we've covered most of what we want to say about that. If any of our lovely listeners have suggestions for encounters for us to dissect and take a look at and see what's good about them, see what's bad about them, we'd love to talk about that. My final reckoning of this one is it's too dangerous. She's too tough and she does need to be taken down, and the flight needs to be taken off her because that's what makes her impossibly difficult to handle, and the armor buff spells are really too much. Both of those over-egg the pudding, putting her from being a very dangerous threat to being an almost unstoppable threat. So those would be my takeaways from that one. Yeah,
so Richard Pett, with 2 T's, who wrote this, just chill, man. Just easy. It's book 2. We don't need to kill them just yet. Book 2 of 6, yeah. So, and as you say, for levels 7.
This is level 7 fight.
Oh, by the time you
start at level 4.
Yeah.
By the time you get to this, you should be level 6 or level 7. Probably level 7. I would make sure they were level 7. Don't send them into this just at 6. The poor fellas.
How forewarned are they that they're going up against a Lamia?
They don't know it's a Lamia. They know it's somebody mind controlling people. That could be anything. And Lamia matriarchs were created for this. The chance for players actually metagaming to know that a Lamia matriarchs exist is functionally impossible when this came out, because literally they were invented for this adventure. So players will probably know somebody's there, someone's taking over, mind controlling people somehow, and that's what you know going into the fight. But you know relatively little beyond that. I think the Chief Justice has been mind controlled, and that's how you find out about this and go after this. You might know it's a Lamia, actually. You might know, depending on how you handle some stuff. But that's about it.
Presumably your GM might decide to throw you a line to give you some chance to prepare. All right, we still haven't decided what we're going to call this. That's legendary encounters, deadly encounters, something.
Deadly encounters, legendary encounters, adventure party kills. I mean,
We'll figure something out. But folks,
We'll figure something out.
if you like this, let us know. We're on Discord, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, here and there. You can contact us at Party to Adventure Party. There's a whole spiel after the end of this episode. But this is certainly a new feature, I think. I'm going to call it now. A new feature for 2021. We've been through the Deadliest year. Now let's talk about our favourite Deadliest encounters. Hida, do you want to take us out?
Absolutely. No, can't think of anything. Don't get killed, everybody. Don't get killed. This party's over.
Thanks for listening to The Adventure Party. You can find show notes and links to things we've mentioned at www.theadventuringparty.net and on our Facebook page. You can leave comments there, or talk to our Twitter account at AdventurePTY, or you can record a voice message at www.speakpipe.com/theadventureparty. We can also be contacted directly by email at party@theadventureparty.net. If you'd like to be in touch with the party all the time, come join our Discord server, linked in the show notes. The Adventure Party, released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share Alike, and Version 3 license.